Mr. Chris Watkins? Darn, I thought, but I didn't flinch or miss a beat in my conversation with Kevin the bartender. I had only been back in Texas for 6 months after a 3-year self-imposed exile. How did she find me? And more importantly, why? I didn't turn around or acknowledge him in any way. I was just about to deliver the punchline to a particularly risque joke when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Rob said, "Mr. Watkins, my name is Rob Morgan. I have been hired to find you." I raised an eyebrow at Kevin and turned my head ever so slightly. "Did you want to keep that hand, Robbie?" I felt his hand leave my shoulder, and I turned back to Kevin and delivered the punchline. He laughed heartily and popped another Shiner Bock for me and told me it was on the house as he ambled down to the other end of the bar, still chuckling. Rob continued, "Mr. Watkins, we have a business to discuss." I interrupted him. "My name isn't Watkins, and I have no business with you unless you want to hire me to weld something. If not, well, we have nothing to discuss." "Mr. Watt." That was all he got out before he hit the floor. I put $20 on the bar and, massaging my right hand, waved to Kevin and rose to leave. Rob warned, "Mr. Watkins, you are a hard man to find, and I have no intention of starting my search over again." I looked down at the taser gun he was aiming at me, at my groin no less, the little jerk. And even though he was sprawled on the floor at the time, it was pretty intimidating. As he stood, he wiped a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth. "I have no qualms about using it, so sit your rear down and let's have a chat." I glanced at Kevin, who was heading our way, and waved him off. He paused, nodded, and then said, "Let me know if y'all need anything, Bill." "Thanks, Kevin, I will." I turned back and looked at the taser-toting jerk. I smirked. "Who on earth packs a taser in Texas?" I chuckled and leaned in a little closer to him. "Do I know you, boy?" Rob replied angrily. "Forget you, Mr. Watkins. Your manners need some work, son. You can't have been raised in Texas. Why don't you call me Bill and then tell me who you are, what the heck you want?" "Bill." "Is it?" "Okay, Bill," Rob said cautiously. "Kevin set us up with a couple of beers and put it on Robbie's tab." I smiled, sat in the nearest booth, and asked, "So why don't you tell me who this Watkins guy is and why you have such a big stick up your rear about him?" "Okay, Bill. We'll play it your way. For the moment anyway," Rob began. "Mr. Chaz Watkins was a successful, wealthy Dallas businessman who disappeared without a trace just over 3 years ago. He is married to a Mrs. Amy Watkins, and they have a daughter, Sarah. She's 23. My name, as I told you, is Rob Morgan. I have been hired to find Chaz Watkins and return him to Dallas." "Really? 3 years, you say, and without a trace? What's that got to do with me? You seem to have mistaken me for him, but I am neither Chaz Watkins nor a successful businessman. My name is Bill Grant. I weld stuff for cash, play a little guitar, badly, and travel some." I had been so careful. Before I left, I paid a lot of money for a completely new identity. Since then, I have grown my hair and beard and lost about 30 pounds of fat and then added about 20 pounds of muscle. Amy wouldn't recognize me if I spat on her. I'd have to remember to put that to the test if I ever saw her again. When I left Dallas, I drove north and west for 3 days, stopped and found a trailer for lease, enrolled in a welding class at a local community college, and started my life over. I left everything but cash in Dallas. A high-paying job, 2 homes, cars, credit cards, keys, cell phone, clothes, and a lying, cheating witch of a wife. I paid cash for a used Ford F-150, registered it in my new name, and drove it to a music store where I bought a used but beautiful Martin Dreadnought. I didn't take anything with me but the clothes on my back. I rarely stayed in one place for more than 6 or 8 months and always paid cash. I didn't have any credit cards or a cell phone. I worked for cash, under the table, didn't file a tax return, and almost always stayed out of trouble. It had to be Sarah. I couldn't cut her out completely. About 15 or 16 months after I bolted, I sent her an email to let her know I was alive. I sent her another before every move from a public library computer just to let her know that I loved her and was thinking of her. I never told her where I was or why I left, and I didn't respond to any of her questions about either subject. She could squeeze that out of her horrible mother. Darn. Well, Bill, sneered Robbie. As I was saying, a little over 3 years ago, Mr. Watkins just up and disappeared, and no one seemed to know anything about it. For the first year or so, the police followed up, rather casually in my opinion, and many suspected he either ran off with another woman or that he was the subject of some foul play on the part of Mrs. Watkins. It was a difficult year for Mrs. Watkins personally, professionally, financially. Rob continued. She had tried to liquidate some of their assets but didn't have a power of attorney and couldn't get Mr. Watkins declared dead, so she was stuck. There was money in the bank but few new funds coming in, so she went through those rather quickly. She hired a lawyer to help her get her husband declared dead. Unfortunately for Mrs. Watkins, about 16 months after her husband's disappearance, their daughter Sarah received an email from someone claiming to be Mr. Watkins. Of course, the daughter was elated, but it made having Mr. Watkins declared deceased a difficult proposition. At that point, the police closed the case, and Mrs. Watkins hired my firm to find one Mr. Chaz Watkins and bring him back to Dallas to face charges of fraud and enable Mrs. Watkins to secure sole access and control to the marital assets. The poor dear, I tittered. She sounds in a pickle. So tell me, Robbie, how do I fit into this little made-for-TV movie? Well, Mr. Watkins, may I call you Chaz? Rob asked. You can call me Bill like everyone else, I replied firmly. I am authorized by the state of Texas to forcibly, if necessary, escort you, Chaz Watkins, to the Dallas County Sheriff to answer to charges of fraud and abandonment. I laughed out loud, much to his annoyance. That's a big mouthful for a little guy, Robbie. Your story is cute, but what fraud has been committed? When did bailing on a lousy marriage become a crime in Texas? And why would the Dallas County Sheriff give a darn? That dog just don't hunt, Robbie. I would say that if you ever do find this Chaz Watkins, you'll have to do a better job threatening him. He doesn't sound stupid to me. Seems to me that convincing him that he should return to Dallas is a long shot, and I suspect that if he just left, he had a good reason. Let me help you out with a little role play, Robbie. Why should he go back? What's in it for him? I'm guessing you'll have to dig pretty deep to come up with an answer to those questions. I emptied my beer bottle and swallowed. You can put your little laser pointer away now, Robbie. Under the table, I pulled the slide back on my Glock. He really ought to pay more attention to people. He lost a little of his color knowing there was a round in the chamber of the 9mm currently pointed at him, and gently placed his taser at the spot on the table I was indicating. I'd like to tell you a story, Robbie, I said. It's a story a friend of mine told me. Oh, I'd say about 3 years ago. You listening? Good. How about a couple more beers and a basket of wings, Kevin? My man, Robbie here is on an expense account. So there was this guy I met about 3 years ago. Let's call him Chaz. He was married to a woman. We'll call her Amy, and they very coincidentally had a daughter named Sarah. This is the story my friend Chaz relayed to me. I can tell you the moment my marriage ended, or at least the moment I knew it was doomed. It was Amy's 50th birthday. We had decided to celebrate her 50th birthday at our weekend home in the country, just the two of us. She had always been a quiet woman who had no interest in parties or elaborate affairs. We are fairly well off, and because of that, she had everything she needed and wanted. That made gift-giving difficult, but I spent months thinking about what to get her, subtly feeling her out in conversations, polling her friends, and I was happy with the gifts I chose for her. She apparently was not. It was clear the moment she saw them. Her face fell, just for an instant, before the mask of forced appreciation descended as she thanked me. We had been married for 24 years at this point, and I thought I knew her well, and it was obvious to me that she had expected something quite different. I chewed on that thought for a moment, and then asked her how she really felt. She assured me that she was happy, but the smile she wore was forced. I pressed the issue, and she finally acknowledged that the gifts were not what she was expecting, and she had hoped for something a little more, well, She wasn't sure what exactly. Just not these. If she didn't know, how the heck was I going to know? I apologized for ruining such an important milestone for her and told her that I would do my best to make it up to her. She told me that I could make it up to her if I wanted, but that she was really surprised that her 50th didn't rate more thoughtfulness from me. Huh? I tried explaining to her my reasoning for each of the gifts, but the more I said, the more irritated she became with me. In the end, I promised to make it up to her, and she responded, "If you'd have given me enough thought to begin with, you wouldn't have to try to make it up to me, and how do you make up for this kind of mess up? I'm never going to turn 50 again." Then she told me she wasn't feeling well and wanted to go home to Dallas. We rode home in silence, both of us seething. We almost never married. We were in a long-distance relationship while I was away at college. She is 3 years older than me and had already graduated. And while I was visiting her for a long weekend, I caught Amy cheating on me. We had been strolling downtown when we were stopped by a tall, older man, probably 50, who hugged her affectionately. Amy introduced the two of us, and when he shook my hand, he smirked at me. He actually smirked. His was a weak handshake, and my father taught me to always be cautious around a man with a weak handshake. My guard was up, and I took an instant dislike to him. "Nice to meet you, Dan. Are you a friend of Amy's father?" I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something off here. Amy was a little flustered, and he had acted a little smug. While she was at work later that day, I did a little digging and found out they had been seeing each other for about a month. I found their love letters, for goodness sake. She wasn't even hiding it. We had agreed to be exclusive. When I confronted her, she of course denied it. They were only friends. I told her to get lost and left immediately. I didn't call or write her and didn't take her calls. I threw her letters in the trash without reading them. Her friends began calling and I ignored them. Then she had my friends calling me, pleading her case. I told them all to tell her she needn't worry, that she was free to marry her grandpa now. I absolutely hate being lied to. Ultimately, she came to see me and over time managed to convince me to give her a second chance. I did, but I kept her on a very short leash for a very long time and told her in no uncertain terms that if she ever cheated on me again, we were through. 2 years later, we married. She never did admit to the cheating. After 11 years of marriage, Amy threatened to divorce me. I was drinking too much, working too much, traveling too much, and she was no longer interested in sharing her life with me. We argued. I told her that while I could not curb my travel, I could cut back on work a little and certainly would rein in my drinking. I begged her to think of our young daughter, Sarah. She eventually agreed, but I was saddled with some pretty severe restrictions, and she set about separating our finances and lives. She told me she was just preparing for the inevitable. I complained that she didn't seem to really want to have this work, and she just shrugged her shoulders and left the room. I was determined, however, and over the next couple of years, she relaxed. Mostly, I think, because I started making several times what she was. Actually, I paid more in tax than she earned in a year, and separate finances only benefited me, allowing me to pursue my own interests without having to discuss things with her. I bought a couple of motorcycles and a large sailboat, took flying lessons, and bought a Cessna. I wore designer suits and drove a late-model BMW. I bought our second home in the countryside, a 50-acre weekend retreat, without any financial assistance from her. I always contributed to the household first, paid for all of the family vacations, and still I was living a life she wanted a bigger piece of. So she relaxed. I am not convinced that we ever really recovered from that episode. 2 years ago, I had come close to divorcing her. Over the years, Amy became more combative with me. She had become a shrew, and I her employee. We rarely had intimacy, maybe twice a year. And when we did, it was more like we were both scratching an itch. There was no intimacy, no love. I was sure she had cheated on me over the years, but I had no proof. I don't think she had any long-term affairs, just a lot of one-night stands during her travels for work. She had gotten better at cheating and hiding it. Our daughter had just left for college, and one evening, after a rather nasty and public attack on my character and attractiveness, I had had enough, and I gave her an ultimatum. Either we work on becoming a stronger, more loving couple with better communication and an active, fulfilling love life, or we go our separate ways. I no longer wanted to live like people simply tolerating the presence of one another. I actually had to have her served with a petition for divorce before she agreed to talk. We argued for days, and it was the first time in years we had really communicated. She didn't want a divorce. That surprised me, and I told her so. She promised that she would recommit to our relationship and work on her part of the marriage. I was skeptical, feeling like it was my money that she really wanted, but I loved her, and finally relented. So we agreed on new rules of engagement and communication and set about to fix our marriage. I took the lead and pushed her, and while she seemed content to travel this road with me, I always felt like I was driving Miss Daisy. She was in the back seat, taking in the scenery while I did all the heavy lifting. After a year, I told her I wanted her in the front seat with me and occasionally driving. She agreed, but remained steadfastly in the back seat. She, of course, did have her own list of complaints, and I listened to those, acknowledged them, and began to try to address each of them. I loved her, and while she was rarely initiating anything to help improve our marriage, she participated in everything I suggested, and things improved. We were communicating better and having much more rewarding and frequent intimacy, perhaps twice a week, sometimes more. She was not as sexually adventurous as she had been early on in our marriage, but she agreed to try new things and seemed content. I relaxed. We were content, but I also knew she was holding back. Several weeks had passed since her 50th birthday, and things seemed to be increasingly cool between us. The affection was dwindling, at least on her part, and the intimacy began to gradually dry up. When I asked Amy about it, she blamed it on work stress and promised that when her schedule calmed down, things would return to normal. They didn't. She had always had to work long hours in the middle of projects, so at first I didn't see anything alarming about the late nights. It did begin to dawn on me that it seemed more excessive than usual, and that I was spending more weekends alone at our country home. She always had a plausible excuse, however, and I decided to just wait it out a while longer. We only had intimacy twice in the next 6 weeks, both times at my insistence, and both those times she seemed to be simply tolerating my getting off. Immediately after one lovemaking session in which she hardly participated, she rolled over to sleep, and another time she simply left the room. Evenings and weekends she was doing everything possible to avoid me. When that was impossible or difficult, she seemed bored at best, but more routinely simply irritated. I remembered this pattern. The shrew was back. Part of our work over the previous 2 years had been to communicate any issues we may be having before they became all-out fights, and if we did fight, we had tried to be better, more productive in our conflicts. Keeping it as impersonal as we could, aiming steadfastly at a resolution, always trying to see the other side. We wouldn't tolerate cop-outs, excuses, or non-participation. We always acknowledged the aggrieved party's feelings and tried to address those issues only. No more deflection, avoidance, and blame. When I confronted her about her schedule, lack of affection, and our dead love life, she didn't want to discuss it. She put me off several times over a couple of days, and when I pointed out that she was not playing by our new rules of engagement and communication, she told me to shove the rules up my rear and leave her alone. I suppressed my anger and, between clenched teeth, reminded her that we had agreed these were important and non-negotiable. She told me to get lost and go negotiate with my right hand from now on. Message received, loud and clear. Was she cheating on me? Perhaps. I didn't need to know. Texas is a no-fault state, but I wanted to know. It seemed clear that our marriage was now over, and if that was the case, her cheating made little difference, but I hate being lied to, and this time she would pay for it. I had often reminded her how I felt about fidelity and honesty. I understand that you can't choose who you are attracted to, but you can choose what you decide to do about it. I told her that if she was so attracted to someone else that she couldn't resist being with them, we would divorce first. I would be hurt, but I would respect her for respecting me enough to wait until we were divorced and being honest with me. We could part amicably, sort of, and I promised to do the same for her. I had to know for certain, and I had things to do. Before we had recombined our finances, some 8 years earlier, I had siphoned some of my cash into an investment account. I had also arranged with my employer to have all of my bonuses deposited in that new account. I never told my wife about this, mostly because she wanted to control our finances and I thought I could do a better job investing than she could. It turned out I was right, and my investment portfolio was now very healthy. One of the benefits offered by my long-term employer was tax preparation and filing services, and that was the one area my wife and I never came back together on. At her insistence, 13 years ago, we had begun to file our taxes separately, and she saw no real benefit to changing that, so we didn't. I suspected she was hiding money and decided that allowed me to keep that investment account hidden from her. I had planned to surprise her with the money in our retirement, assuming we made it to retirement. In my mind, if she wasn't cheating and we divorced, I would happily split all of our assets. But if she was cheating, well, that was different. I had to figure out how to protect this money. She would not be rewarded for betrayal and dishonesty. I also had to figure out how to gain control of our joint accounts, sell our Dallas home. It was in my name only, but she loved it. And try to retain our country property. I loved that place. We had planned to retire there, and I didn't want to give it to her or have to sell it. Of course, if it looked like I couldn't save it for myself, I would force its sale before I would allow her to take it. I have paid for it, furnished it, and maintained it for 10 years now. She simply wasn't entitled to it as far as I was concerned. If I had to, I would give her the house in Dallas. I wanted to dump it just because she loved it so much, but I would forego that pleasure if it meant I could keep my country home. This was going to take time, and I wasn't sure that she wasn't going to simply have me served someday soon, so I got to work immediately. The first thing I had to do was see a lawyer. One of my old college buddies was a corporate lawyer here in Dallas. I called him and asked him to meet with me, and he readily agreed. We met at a roadhouse near his office that evening, and over dinner and a couple of beers, I explained my situation and asked for a referral to a family law attorney, as well as his personal and legal thoughts on my situation. His legal advice was sobering. Basically, I was doomed. If I divorced her, there was no way to protect any of my assets from her. No legal means, at any rate. And while Texas still had a healthy good old boy network that frowned on cheating wives, no fault meant I might get a 50-50 split with a small alimony payment to Amy. No matter who did what, if she was cheating on me, then no harm, no foul. Give her half of everything you have and let her move her boyfriend into your house while you pay her alimony. He advised me to, from a legal standpoint where it impacted the status of my marriage, do nothing. I merely blinked at him. He smiled and said, "Don't divorce her. Change the equation. Find out if she's cheating, and if she is, forget her boyfriend and split with whatever you can take with you. Let her pony up for a divorce and try to recover anything you take with you." He did refer me to a shark of a lawyer specialized in family law. She was the only lawyer he would be afraid of if he and his wife were to divorce. Plan B it was. Yup, the gravy train was over for Amy. She continued to avoid me, and I let her. I didn't ask about her schedule or weekends or our love life or lack of intimacy anymore, and she seemed to take that as a victory, as if I had simply accepted the new situation. I was now spending most of my time at our country home and rarely saw her. That seemed to please her. My new divorce lawyer met with me and helped me change the beneficiaries on my will and insurance policies, etc. She also suggested I hire a private investigator because, as she said, Texas may be no fault, but there ain't nothing like a little visual carnal evidence to nudge a negotiation in the right direction. I agreed. She recommended an ex-cop who ran an agency she had used for some time with much success and had her AA contact him to schedule an appointment. He saw me that afternoon, and I paid for the deluxe package and had our entire life wired for sound and video. Within days, they knew the who and the when and how long and were working on getting the video evidence my lawyer thought might help me if it came to divorce. A week later, I sat reviewing the video evidence. I was more devastated than I thought I would be, and even Plan B faded from my thoughts. The intimacy didn't strike me as anything special. He was not any better endowed than I am or in better shape. He didn't have any better techniques or even get her off most of the time. She didn't do anything with him that she hadn't done with me, but her paramour took every opportunity to run me down verbally, and she participated in that enthusiastically, even suggesting they get together in my bed next time, which they did. She didn't ask him to wear protection and was trying to figure out a way to trick me. Since I hadn't expressed any interest in intimacy with her for a while, they discussed how to overcome that. It was him who suggested cutting me off in the first place, but now the thought of deceiving me really had him turned on. And Amy, too, for that matter. I didn't know this woman and wondered if I ever truly had. I felt empty. Knowing your spouse is cheating and seeing your spouse cheat are quite different animals. I had no fight left in me. I had the video evidence sealed and gave it to my lawyer for safekeeping with instructions that it be given to my daughter in the event of my death. I prepaid Sarah's college tuition through graduation from our joint savings account and then liquidated my investment account. I would live on what I had from my investment account, and it would last me for years without being frugal. And now our joint savings account was severely depleted. 2 weeks later, I looked around the house one last time, sighed, and made peace with my decision. I left my keys, cell phone, and wallet on the desk in our foyer where I always left them. I took off my wedding ring and dropped it on the pillow of what was my side of the bed. Let her wonder about that. Then I left. I didn't speak with anyone, I didn't leave any letters. I walked out the front door without even bothering to close it, walked around the corner, got in my new pickup truck, and drove away. 2 weeks later, a 40-something married man and father of 3 was mugged and savagely beaten coming out of a Motel 6. What a cheap jerk. He would walk again, not for a while, and even then with a pronounced limp. A month after the mugging, his wife received a FedEx package with video showing her husband being unfaithful with a woman who looked to be in her early 50s. I understand that a year later they were divorced and he was broke. After I left, I drove aimlessly for 3 days. I didn't really have a plan. I ended up stopping in a small town for lunch one day and decided I'd stay for a while. I found a small community college offering classes in welding and enrolled. Why not? After 12 months, I managed to find work welding for an auto body shop. I only had a year of welding classes, so I couldn't get a real welding gig, but found lots of people willing to hire a guy for cash since it was a lot cheaper than a certified welder, and most welders weren't interested in the little jobs I was taking. I enjoyed my work there for another 4 months before deciding it was time to move on. Over the next 2 years, I drove around the country, stopping in small towns every now and then to get laid and weld something. I was enjoying myself for the first time in years. I had hated my job in Dallas. The money was fantastic, and even though I was a natural and excelled at it, I found it difficult to get up every morning to face another day of it. I did it for my family. Amy expected it, and Sarah deserved it. Amy loved the money, and it meant that she could play the saint working for a not-for-profit and being paid peanuts to help other people. In reality, the organization she worked for was mostly staffed by wives of rich businessmen who wanted something to do and to be seen doing it. All of their fundraising events were covered by the local Who's Who rag, and the dresses the staff wore cost more than most of their patrons earned in a year of hard work. It was pathetic, and most of the money raised went to fund the next charity event. Mostly they helped themselves feel better about themselves. Meanwhile, I busted my rear in a job I hated because I loved my family, and that was what was expected of me. When I left, I decided to only ever do things for myself from that point on. I had relationships with more than a few women over those 3 years. I enjoyed myself and hoped honestly that they did as well, but I was in it for me. I was not going to settle down, and if they became too clingy or difficult, I simply cut them loose. I wanted companionship, not a friend or soulmate. I haven't looked back since and don't intend to. I don't know what became of Amy, the house, or the 50 acres in the country, and I don't care. She chose her path in life, and if she's happy with her decision, then I can live with that. I do secretly hope the witch is miserable and broke, but I won't go out of my way to make it happen. I would like to see my daughter again someday, but only if she can promise not to let Amy know. So far, she is having a difficult time making that promise. I keep hoping. As I understand it, Robbie, I said, my friend is happy now. He left a cheating woman and a miserable job behind and doesn't give his awful wife a spit of thought. Why would he go back? So he can pay for her to mistreat him and let her make him miserable again? That just don't make no sense to me. He's happy, healthy, and wealthy in all the areas that matter. I continued. His wife and his marriage to her made him miserable. When he finally woke up and gave up, he realized the only two good things that came out of it were his daughter and eventually his freedom. He realized, finally, that he was the only one in the marriage, really. His wife brought very little and nothing else. Do you know, he told me that after he left and met a few other women, he came to realize that even what she brought wasn't all that special. He knew in retrospect that she never, not once, brought her A-game to the marriage. She played him for 24 darn years. That just don't sound like anything worth staying for, or going back to. Hey, Kev, how about a couple more beers here? I called out. He told me he felt his wife was a card-carrying narcissist, and so he figured the cruelest thing he could do to her is pay no attention to her. He didn't want her to see his pain so she could feed on it and feel like she mattered because of it. Indifference was the key. That would hurt her. But how could he be around her and be indifferent? He decided if he just left everything he would be telling her, not only was he indifferent about her, but about their entire life together. He figured it might take years, but she would eventually falter and fail, and in that, he would win. Robbie sighed, nodded. You're an interesting character, Bill, and that's a good story. Where's your buddy these days? I shrugged my shoulders. Who the heck knows, Robbie? Finding companionship and welding something somewhere, definitely not working his rear off for an ungrateful, cheating woman. My bet is he's probably in Wisconsin. He told me he always wanted to see Wisconsin. Wherever he is, I'm sure he's as happy as can be and not looking to change anything. Say, why doesn't your friend Mrs. Watkins just file for divorce under abandonment? Wouldn't it give her the control of the marital assets she seems to want so badly? Seems to me an easy fix to her problem, and then you could stop looking for this Chaz guy and upsetting complete strangers in the process. There are no longer any assets to gain control of, Bill, Rob explained. She tried to file under abandonment, but because she tried to have him declared dead first by the time she got around to filing, she had lost the house, the country property, and her job. You don't say? What happened and why you still looking for this guy? Well, she ran out of money. She couldn't afford the properties on her salary, and because she couldn't sell them both, properties went into foreclosure. The house was bought by an older retired couple, and the country estate by a company called CWW LLC. They are some kind of metal arts consulting company. Mrs. Watkins lost her job when it was discovered she was having an affair with a married employee. Wow, she sure does have wandering eyes, don't she, Robbie? He nodded. Well, I sure am sorry I wasted your time, Bill, but I did almost enjoy meeting you. He fished $40 out of his wallet, threw it on the table, rose, and extended his hand to me. No hard feelings? None, I said. But you should be more careful who you upset in future. You're lucky I'm such a patient guy. He laughed as he turned to go. He took about 6 steps before stopping, and without turning, he asked, Bill? Yes? For what it's worth, Amy still loves him. She's sorry and had hoped to get him back. She is depressed, drinks too much, and is not doing well. Women like her don't really know what love is, Robbie. They love themselves, and they love the things other people provide for them. They are users and are incapable of thinking of others. They are greedy and ugly and deserve any misery they bring on themselves through their abuse of others. If she was sorry, she wouldn't keep betraying other men. She is sorry only that she is not being provided for, that people might know the truth about her. She is sorry she got caught and that the money has dried up. If she were truly sorry, she might consider the feelings of her daughter and the fact that she is suffering without a relationship with her father. She might consider what she has put her husband through and leave him alone. She doesn't deserve him, but she won't acknowledge that. In her warped, sick little world, she is the center of the universe, and reality, responsibility, love, respect, and honesty only apply if they suit her purposes. He and his daughter deserve better, don't you think? He slowly turned to face me. "Chaz?" Rob asked. "Yes, Bob?" I replied. "Wisconsin gets cold in the winter, but I do know that Sarah loves it there. Maybe CWWLLC should relocate their office to Racine." "Thank you, Bob. They just might. They just might." And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.